There we are. Twosleevers is live now. I tell you what, never a dull moment with us. You just never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So I hope you guys can see at this time. I'm just trying to get the stream up here so I can see. And we're going to get going in a minute here. I know I've said this before, but this time I mean it. This time I absolutely mean it. Okay, so let me know. I know other people are posting, so I'm going to get started. So for those of you who missed the very choppy introduction, I'm Urvashi Pitre. My blog is twosleevers.com, and we are making a few different things. We're going to start out with the carrot halva. We're going to do butter chicken, but the difference in this butter chicken is that we're going to try to cook rice on top so that you can see how pot and pot works. And if you have questions about how pot and pot works, this would be a great time to ask. My son Alex is going to help us with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make your own garam masala so that you understand why it's important to be able to use whole spices in your cooking. Okay, can everybody hear? Just type a comment, let Alex know that you're able to hear and everything is good, and I'll keep going. So this is a mini. This is a 3-quart, and this is the one that I'm actually going to make the carrot halva in. So Roger, if you could switch to the overhead view. What I'm going to do is I have some homemade ghee here. I really need to make some more. There's obviously not enough in here, but I didn't have time today. So what I'm going to do is this pot is already on saute, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of ghee in the bottom here. There we go. Okay, so now you can see there's a little bit of a delay, so sometimes I don't see exactly what it is you guys are seeing. So I'm going to let this ghee heat up, and I'm going to walk you through what else I have here. Okay, so I have some golden raisins, and people always ask and say, you know, can I use yellow? You can use whatever raisins you've got. I pretty much use a box, and I finish that box up. So when this is hot, what I'm going to do is we're going to put this in. Now the reason you're doing this is because you want these plumped up. Okay, so heating it a little bit plumps it up. Now the nice thing about a pressure cooker is that the heat and the moistness is going to plump it up anyway, but we're going to go ahead and put it in and allow it to just cook a little bit. Now here I have pistachios. Now the recipe in the book calls for cashews, and the reason I use these was because A, I fancied a change, and B, I wanted you to know that you can switch up the nuts. You can use sliced almonds, you can use pistachios, you can use whatever you want. And again, all you're doing is sauteing it really lightly and kind of getting it going. Okay, so it doesn't require a whole bunch of cooking. And to be honest, there are times I just skip this step. Like I don't even bother and I just skip it, and it seems to work out well. Now this is the epitome of pour and just cook. So what I'm going to do is I have here baby carrots. Now in the cookbook, I've used grated carrots, and you can, but I wanted to again give you some variety in the ways you can cook it. Sometimes I can't grate because of RA or whatever else is going on. Sometimes I don't feel like it. So I'm going to put in my baby carrots. We're going to stir all this up, and then I'm going to add in 1/4 of a cup of sweetener. Now in my case, I'm using Swerve. You can use sugar, you can use whatever you want. Now here's a hack that I have. This right here is cashew powder. Now it is not traditional to use cashew powder in here, but there are 2 hacks that I've done for this recipe. One is this cashew powder helps create a little bit of thickness in the soup, in the halva that you really want. And so I go ahead and put that in. And then the second hack I'm using is actually one that can be a little bit scary. And the reason it can be scary is because I am about to pressure cook milk. Now, I don't generally advise doing this because milk splits really, really badly. And you'll see it separate. But when the camera comes back, I'm going to explain to you why I do this. So I'm going to pour in the milk, and then I am going to take a little bit of ground cardamom. You must grind this fresh. There's no point. You may as well just use sawdust if you're not going to grind fresh. And that's it. That's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to close this one up. I'm getting really good at this backwards thing. And then I'm going to turn this, is the sweetness, I got it from Swerve, but you can do it from whatever you want. So Roger, if you'll bring the camera back to me, I'll explain kind of what I'm doing at this point. I am setting pressure to about 10 minutes. And that's really about as long as those carrots take to really mush down, okay? Now, because this is a mini, I don't actually need to press start. It's just gonna start on its own. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to move this to the side. Really, guys, you should not move things once they come to pressure. So what I'm doing is a little bit not cool. Okay, so in that 3 minutes, 5 minutes is how long it took for me to get my carrot halwa going. Now, let me explain about the milk. So typically I don't pressure cook milk. And when I open this, you will realize why I don't pressure cook milk. The reason I don't do it is that pressure cooked milk separates really, really fast. Okay. The milk and the solids are broken up into two, and it creates this curdled, ungodly mess inside your pressure cooker. Now there's a reason why I'm doing it here. Hang on. Let me just figure this guy out. Give me a minute. I'm going to switch this around because the wire isn't long enough. Okay. The reason I'm doing it in this case is that traditionally when you make gajar halwa or carrot halwa, you have this thing called khoya or kava, depending on the language that you're using in India. And kava is basically, here's what it is. Somebody has taken a big pot of milk and sat in front of it and stirred it pretty much all day. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get all the water to evaporate out of that milk, and what you have left in there are milk solids. So you can actually, if you go into an Indian store and look into the frozen section, you can often find it. It's spelled Khoya, khoya. Okay, and that's just the milk solid. Now, typically most of us don't have that. So what I'm doing with this is by forcing the milk under pressure to separate by cooking it for a really long time, I'm essentially extracting milk solids in a very, very quick manner. If you can get khoya, you should use it. If you're like me and you don't have it, then this is a pretty good hack that you can use. Okay, so that is a carrot halwa. Alex, how are we doing? No questions? Any comments? Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the butter chicken. Alex, honey, do me a favor. Move all of this aside into a clean zone for me. Thank you. And for this, let me just move my little tray over here and show you what's going to go in here. Okay, so this is a very simple recipe. I almost spilled the rice. I'm really glad you guys didn't see that mess that I was about to make. This is a very, very simple recipe. What's interesting about this recipe is that as popular as it is, I have been asked about doing this with everything except the ingredients that are in it. Okay, so it's basically, it's got tomatoes, it's got chicken, it's got butter, it's got cream, and people have said, and garam masala, and people have said, can I do it without the butter? Can I do it without the cream? Can I do it without the chicken? Can I do it without the tomatoes? Can I do it without the garam masala? So, you know, there are many, many different ways to be able to use this, but I would suggest to you that if you've never made it, then the first time you really should just use the recipe as is. So I am going to turn on this pot, and I'm going to get it on saute. Actually, I'm going to just do pressure cook. So here's the thing that I do. Really, if I don't need something sauteed and I just need it kind of heated up, I go ahead and just set pressure cook so that I'm not messing with the buttons again and again. Now, it's not going to come to pressure while the pot is open anyway, so it doesn't really matter. How are we doing, Alex? Okay, so this is the ultimate pour and cook. So Roger, if you'll scooch to a top view, that will be helpful for all of us. So I'm going to start with tomatoes. Now, people have asked about diced tomatoes, canned tomatoes, crushed tomatoes. Doesn't matter. People have pureed them. You just need tomatoes. Now, notice they're undrained. There's very little liquid in this recipe. All of the liquid comes from two or three sources. It comes from the chicken, it comes from the tomatoes, and it comes from some of the ginger garlic. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Roger's making hand movements at me. Oh, my fingers are getting in the picture. Got it. So I'll be careful with that. Okay, so I've put tomatoes in here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some garlic. Now, I'm using whole garlic because at the end of this, I'm going to puree the living daylights out of this sauce. So it doesn't really matter whether you use whole or not. And why work extra if you don't have to, right? So I typically don't. I have a lot more ginger than the recipe calls for. I kind of like the ginger. If you're trying to reduce spice, ginger can be spicy, especially for children. So you might kind of go easy on that a little bit. But we're just going to throw ginger. So I've got tomato, I've got ginger, I've got garlic. And next thing I'm going to do is I've got about a pound of chicken. Now, I have left this chicken pretty much whole. And the reason for that is that there is so much cook time. There's 10 minutes of cook time, which the sauce needs in order to get sweet. But if I cook my chicken for 10 minutes, we would have a bit of a disaster if it was in small bite-sized pieces. So I'm going to take this chicken just as is. I'm going to dump it in there. And then I am going to use a very handy little thing that most of you who are in my group have seen. which is a masala dabba. And I'm going to start throwing things in. You guys should follow the recipe. I have some turmeric that's going in here. Very good for anti-inflammatory properties. I have salt that's going to go in here. And some cayenne. Now here's another place where you can cut down on spice. And then I've made some fresh garam masala, which I'm going to show you how we make. And I'm going to put that in. Now this recipe calls for garam masala twice. Once in the cooking and then once later. Okay? So basically, this is all that's going to happen with this. I used whole tomatoes because I forgot to buy any. But here's the thing. Alex, how are we doing? All good? Can everybody see and hear okay? We're doing all right? Okay, now here's what we're going to do next. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a pot-in-pot dish. So Roger, if you'll move the camera to me, I'll explain how this works, and then we'll get started. So now pot-in-pot is a very handy technique when you're trying to cook multiple things at the same time. There are a couple of things that you need for this. One thing that you need is a raised trivet, okay, a steamer rack. And I can provide links for all of these things, so just follow along now and I'll give you the links later. So basically you put this rack the way it is. And then what I'm going to do is I have in here half a cup of washed rice. This rice is going to go on top. I'm going to take the water that I need for this rice and add that in. And Alex, here, let me get this real quick. I put away my ghee even though I needed it, so I'm going to put a little bit of ghee in here. Okay. And then typically I put in a little bit of salt. Okay. All right, Roger, if you'll do an overhead view real quick, I'll show how this is working. So what you have in here is you've got the chicken underneath, you've got a steamer rack, you've got some rice, you've got water, and you've got ghee. Now, rice typically only takes 4 minutes, but one of the reasons that you do pot and pot is because you want it elevated, okay? And the elevation, what the elevation does is it slows down the cooking. So there's a pot and pot video. I just made a huge mess with my hands here. There's a pot and pot video that you might want to watch that explains kind of how pot and pot cooking works, but this is the simplest. So I don't even need to cover the rice really. I'm just going to put the lid on. And this is an ultra, so it seals on its own, and it's got 10 minutes, and I'm going to move this off to one side. Okay, Alex, read out some of the comments to me so I know what's going on.
I almost always have /use brown rice. PIP never seems to get done. Any recommendations?
Yeah, if you're doing PIP brown rice, I don't know how long you're cooking it, but for PIP, you need increased time. So you're going to need, brown rice takes 22 minutes. PIP, you're probably going to need closer to 30 or 40 minutes. So that's, you've just got to watch out with that. It's just going to take a while in order to cook. So you need to be careful with brown rice on that. Any other questions, Alex? Okay, so now for PIP, I showed you this little handy container. Here's the thing. If you've just spent a bunch of money on buying an Instant Pot, you may not want to run out and buy a bunch of accessories. So here's my clever little hack. You see this? I don't know what, 89 cents for 3, I don't even know. I often use these. So as long as it's heat proof and it's something that can go into an oven, then it can be used in the pot. So you can make a half a cup of rice in this, I've learned.
How much water with your half cup of washed rice?
Right, so here's how I make rice. There's a whole rice video. There's slides on Twosleevers.com. If somebody who's familiar with the blog can post that, that would be great. It's in the download section. 1 cup of basmati rice, 1 cup of water, 1 tablespoon of ghee, 1 teaspoon of salt, and if I'm doing it in the liner itself, I typically cook for 4 minutes. Yep.
Proportion of water and rice.
What, Alex?
What is the proportion of water and rice?
Proportion of water and rice. I just said 1 cup water, 1 cup rice. So this pot has turned itself off, which happened last time too, by the way. It just came on. I always do this. Like I always jostle something or whatever. Anyway, the moving thing is not so hot. Like that's the big issue here. You really don't need to be moving your pot, and now you see why, right? Imagine if you were cooking dinner and you'd move the pot like Urvashi and it was off, that you would be in big trouble. You'd have a bunch of hungry people at home. What else, Alex? Okay, so while Alex is looking, I'm going to get my stuff together and show you garam masala. So garam masala is really something that every household has their own recipe for, okay? Now, when you're cooking a Twosleevers recipe, one of the things that's happening is that the garam masala is a stand-in for a bunch of whole spices. So typically in Indian homes, we would use... It would be helpful if I finished my statement and then you asked me. I just got lost my train of thought. What were you asking me?
Is it necessary to add salt and ghee?
It is not necessary to add salt and ghee. I just prefer it because it tastes better. If you're making it in the liner, it's actually quite helpful because the ghee keeps the rice from sticking to the bottom, which a lot of people have issues with. Yep.
How long did you cook the chicken and rice?
Okay, so the chicken, the butter chicken recipe is in the cookbook. It's on the blog and it's cooked for 10 minutes. And then you need 10 minutes at high pressure. So like I said earlier, typically rice takes only about 4 minutes in the liner. But when you're cooking it pot and pot, it does just fine. So when it absorbs all the water that you gave it to cook in, it just kind of hangs out and doesn't overcook because there's no additional water for it to get cooked in. So if you're a new person, if you're a newbie and you're starting, pot and pot rice is an actually very safe way to go. One of the things that, you know, for all of us who've been cooking in pressure cookers for a long time, it's really frustrating when we see new people coming on and being asked to make pasta in the pot or rice in the pot or eggs in the pot, believe it or not. Those are not the easiest things. Like getting your eggs reliably right is actually quite difficult. Pasta is very likely to burn if you don't know what you're doing. It's possible to cook, but you need to know what you're doing. Rice is likely to stick if you don't know what you're doing. So some of those things may not be the easiest. This way of dumping everything in to make the butter chicken, putting the rice on top, you're going to have a wonderful dinner ready with no problems of anything burning or any issues. Go ahead, Alex. Ask any more rice or butter chicken questions we have before I move on to the next thing. Okay. So while Alex is looking, anything, honey? Okay. Alex is like, after I snapped at him a little bit, he's probably not even going to ask a question. He's such a good-natured kid.
It looks like, I don't know if it's a question.
Well, go ahead and say it while we're waiting.
So when you do cook chicken like that,
yeah,
the rice, you do the manual instead of hitting chicken, so basically...
Yes, yes, yes. So there is another, I keep telling you guys to refer to other videos. So far I've told you to look at the pot and pot video, the rice video, but these questions come up quite often. So the question being asked, for those of you who missed it, is why do I use the manual button rather than the poultry button or the chicken button? A couple of reasons. One, many pots don't have a chicken button or the poultry button. The newer ones don't. There are 6 buttons that do very, very different things. And then there are many other buttons on your pot that are simply presets. So your slow cooker, your yogurt, your steam, and a couple of others, they do a saute, pressure cook, do something very different from each other. Slow cook is not the same as pressure cook, saute is not the same as steam, etc. Poultry, meat and bean, chili settings, by and large, they're time presets. The poultry preset was set to 20 minutes, which I find way overcooks chicken. And that button actually is no longer on the newer pots. So you're better off, even if you have a Lux and it has a poultry button, you may or may not want to use it. It's pretty easy to just do 10 minutes and cook it. And that way you have a little more control, because the size of chicken matters. If you're cooking a huge, big chicken breast, the time that takes versus a bite-sized piece of chicken, if you look at my chicken biryani recipe, we cut the chicken so small that it cooks in the 4 minutes that the rice needs. So if you were to do 20 minutes for that, you would have porridge. You would not have chicken biryani. That's kind of why I feel like it gives us more control, is why I use that. Anything else? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. The trivet that came with ours is actually useful for steaming. So when you watch that video about the 6 buttons, one of the things you'll understand about the steam button is steam comes up to temperature really, really fast. So the soup button, for example, is another one that does something different. For the soup button, temperature comes up really slowly so that you don't get a cloudy broth, you don't burn everything, and then the temperature's high. Steam isn't like that. Steam comes on high, stays high. So the things that you would use steam for are delicate vegetables and fish that you don't want to have overcook. Okay, and now when you use steam, because the temperature at the bottom is so hot so fast, if you put a piece of fish or a vegetable on the liner itself, they would burn. So they gave you that little steamer rack to just kind of elevate things a little bit, okay? If you're trying to do pot and pot cooking, that little trivet is like $5 or $6. Alex has a link that he can post to all of these things. Worthwhile investment that you really should consider just to be able to get those. So now, one thing I want to point out. Yes, love?
Is it the steamer rack that's supposed to...
Yes, steamer rack.
Can you use any rice in this?
You can use any rice. Well, time out. There are some rices in order to make things simple, I classify rices into 4 or 5 minute rices, 10-minute rices, and 20+ minute rices. 22+ minutes are the brown rice, black rice, wild rice, wehani rice mixes. Those things take a lot longer to cook. You really should watch the rice video because, you know, on the stove top, you add water. In a pressure cooker, you mainly add time. The only rice, like brown rice, you really just need 1 cup of water also. So for this, the rices that are safe to use are white rice, long grain basmati is the best, and then you can use jasmine rice in this. Your jasmine may be a little bit overcooked, not too bad. Do not use brown rice in this, or wild rice, or black rice. It won't work. Okay, there's not enough cook time. Yeah, love.
10 minutes manual, then all done.
10 minutes manual, and then here's the other thing. 10 minutes natural pressure release. And then there's a little step that I'm going to show you. Now, natural pressure release is this common misconception that you have to let all meats NPR, otherwise they're tough. Yes and no. That NPR time is cook time. So think of it that way. So you cook under pressure for 10 minutes, but then you let pressure come down. When you let pressure come down on its own, it keeps the water inside the pot from boiling. So if you watch the last live show I did, I talked about Boyle's Law and how the pressure and water temperature are kind of, you know, maintained in a reasonable way in the pressure cooker. So that NPR time, 10 minutes of NPR, allows the temperature to come down. And when you release, A, you don't have stuff spewing out the top. And then B, you don't have the water boiling so that your meats don't come out boiled. Okay? Yeah, love.
Is the Twosleevers website where all the videos are?
I'm sorry?
Is the Twosleevers website?
Yes, Twosleevers.com, and there's a site that's a tab that says how to videos, and I actually just redid that with the plugin. And so there's 3 little tabs. One says recipe videos, they're the overhead tasty style videos. Then there's one that says sciencey videos that talks about the Maillard reaction, pot and pot, how to adapt a recipe, the science of cooking rice, etc. And then there's a third section that are these live shows, so you can go look at that. And right next to it, by the way, is a section called downloads, and all the slides on there accompany these presentations that I do, and you can download it, the rice chart, and read on your own time, etc. So you can enjoy that. Okay, one thing I do want to point out, you guys have heard it hissing, right? New people always ask this question and go, there's steam coming out. Should there be steam coming out? The answer to that question depends on where steam is coming out from. What we have going on here is steam from where the valve is. Okay, this valve, the float valve that needs to come up, there is going to be some steam released until there's enough steam to push that valve up and seal the pressure cooker. If you have steam coming in from the sides of the lid, you've got a problem. That should not be happening. You probably have an overfull pot. Your gasket is not on right. The gasket needs to be replaced. Something is going on. So like this is still bobbing, like it's taking its time, and now it's just turned itself off. One thing I will tell you, please do not touch that thing. Don't try to push it in a hurry. The pressure cooker knows what it's doing. You do not know what it's doing. Don't mess with it, okay? It'll come to pressure on its own. All good? Okay, so now we're going to switch to garam masala. So Roger, if you would move to an overhead video view. So as I was saying earlier, the way garam masala works is every family has its own spice mix that they use, okay? Indians also use a lot of whole spices. There's actually another video that you could watch, and it's called How to Cook with Spices. Roger says, my hands are doing too much of this. So there's a video on how to cook with spices and how we use the various different spices. Now, what I have done as a hack for you guys is that I have all of the spices, many of which we would use whole, and we're going to use it in a garam masala recipe, okay? So it is very simple. It's going to take you longer to get these and put them in place than it's going to actually take you to make it. So I'm just going to show you how this works. I forgot to clean out my last go around here. I make these dishes once before you guys come on live. Okay, so here's what I have. I've got coriander seeds. And by the way, you should watch the video on why I ask you to cook with whole spices. That beep signifies something just came to pressure. So I've got coriander seeds. I've got cumin seeds. Now watch, there's nothing sophisticated happening. Everything is just going in here. I have a little bit of cayenne pepper. Again, you can control the heat with that. You can use whole red chilies. I have some cloves, whole cloves that I'm using. I'm going to put some bay leaves in this batch because why not? These are the 2 I want to talk about. This is cinnamon. Now, this does not look like the cinnamon that we get in the market, okay? Look at this. This is actually called cassia bark, C-A-S-S-I-A IA. And it's a very different type of cinnamon than the rolled sticks we get. So sometimes I was getting feedback from people saying that it tastes very cinnamony. Well, if you put a whole couple, 3 sticks in, it's going to taste cinnamony. This is how much you want of it, okay? I'm just going to throw that in there. And this is the other thing people have a lot of questions about. These are actually cardamom seeds. Now, you can buy these like this, or you can buy little cardamom that's either green or white. The green and white are interchangeable. They must be shelled. This is what you want. You do not want to put the pod in. When you're at an Indian grocery store, you'll see a big brown cardamom. That is not the cardamom that we want. We want white or green, and you want, for the garam masala, you want seeds, okay? So all that's going to go in here, and it's literally just those 5 or 6 things that I put in here. And now I'm going to turn this on. It's going to be noisy, and what you're going to see me do is you're going to see me shake it. And the reason I shake it is because I don't want things to get under the blades, okay? Okay, now a lot of this has to be done by sound. You have to listen and hear when the stuff stops thumping around and sputtering about, and that's when you have a pretty good clue that this garam masala is probably done. Okay, that's how long it took for me to make the garam masala that went into the butter chicken. Okay, so this masala keeps for a month or so. Right? You're good for a month or 2. After that, it starts to lose. After that, it starts to lose its flavor and its fragrance, and it's really not doing anybody any good. So that is how simple it is to make the garam masala. So Roger, if you will flip back to me, that will be helpful. Okay. So far, we have started our carrot halwa. We have our rice and chicken happening in here, and by golly, we've made fresh garam masala. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over, and I'm going to show you the butter chicken that I made earlier. So bear with me for a minute. I meant to turn this pot on, but I didn't. Because, you know, there's so much going on, I was distracted. But let me put my stuff over here. Now this is going to be a bit cold, so this may or may not work. Let me turn this on saute. And Roger, if you want to switch to the overhead view, I'm going to show them how the rice and chicken came together. I'm going to press saute here, and I'm going to let it go. So earlier on, I made rice and the wachahuzi for you. Rice and the butter chicken. Okay, so I'm going to wait a minute to make sure that everybody can see it. This, I made it in a different container. This is a 6x3. You see how it fits in here. Okay, so this is my rice, and I'm sorry about the plastic spoon, but that's all I have. This rice has been sitting here for several hours now, so it's a little bit on the dry side because I left it out. But as you see, it's very, very separate grains, which is what you want. Actually, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to use my hands because that's actually the best way to do this rice. Every Indian mother has done this for her kids, so now you can do it for your kids. But what you want to do with the rice is you want to do this with your hands, and you want to break it up, okay? And the key to a good basmati is that it grows in length 2 to 3 times its length. Okay, it doesn't get fat, it just gets tall, which I wish happened to me, but it doesn't happen to me. I just get fat. Anyway, see this rice? See how every grain is separate? Now you were asking me about the ghee. Part of the reason you can see the ghee in my hands, part of the reason you want to do that is so that the rice doesn't stick together. Okay, so we have our rice ready. Let me move that aside. And of course, I need a napkin here because I made a mess. Now what I'm going to do, if this is hot, you want to use these little alligator things. Alex can provide a link for these silicone mitts if anybody's interested. By the way, all the links that Alex is providing are affiliate links, so I need to disclose that, and I just disclosed that. And then what you do from this point is, here's the butter chicken that we made earlier. Now I threw the chicken bits in, and I threw them in big. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish them out, okay? So let me just recap because so much is going on. Here's what I did. I took tomatoes, I threw them in with ginger, garlic, a bunch of spices, and the chicken, okay? Remember, I put in no water. I want you to look in here and see how much water has been created, okay? Now, don't let any of the goodness in here come in. So basically, there's a little more chicken, which I'm going to fish out for now. And I'm going to make sure everything in here is tomatoes. Okay, and it is. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute. And now comes the part that horrifies people, which is we are going to put in a whole stick of butter. Yes. We're making butter chicken. This is the second step of the butter chicken. So I had in here the sauce that we made along with the chicken. And now it's been cooked for 10 minutes. It's been NPR'd. And I'm about to put in this butter in there. So let me just start with this. Now people have made this with, I'm just going to dump it. People have made this with coconut milk and not had any trouble. They've made it with coconut oil and not had any trouble. So if you are dairy free for whatever reason, feel free to do that. I'm going to mix this in. And normally when you make it, it's going to be really hot. So you're not going to have an issue with the butter melting. In fact, be careful it's not too hot when you do it. Mine was made earlier, so it's a little bit not as hot as we would like. I hope my using my hands isn't horrifying you guys. Like I've said to you guys before, this isn't Food Network, you know. This is how real people cook. So that's how I cook. It's called butter chicken because of the entire stick of butter that just went in here. I don't know that there's a huge reason for it. It was just one of those things where people were using up tandoori chicken that was left over. By the way, I just posted an air fryer tandoori chicken, best chicken I've ever made, yesterday. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in air fryer recipes, you might want to check that out. I'm going to mix this until the butter melts a little bit. And then I'm going to immersion blend this so that we can get all of this buttery goodness in here. And the butter chicken with the rice actually just finished cooking. So in this time we've been standing here and chatting, the butter chicken is done. So let me get an immersion blender in here. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So basically, I'm going to tilt this pot. Which direction do I tilt it so you can see it? And then I'm going to blend this until it's very, very smooth. And there's a little piece of garlic there. Okay. Look at my smooth, very easy sauce that's full of flavor. But in case we didn't think it had enough flavor, I am now about to put in a bunch of cream in there. Whoa, sorry about the noise. Okay, here's my cream. And I'm going to mix this into the smooth sauce. And I'm going to put in some heavy whipping cream. You can use half the butter. This is the advantage of cooking at home. You can do whatever the heck you want. If you look at that and go, there's no... Now, keep in mind, this makes 8 servings, right? So you're getting 1 tablespoon of butter per serving. But if that even seems like too much to you and that just doesn't make you happy, then there's no reason you have to do it. You can just use whatever feels good to you. Now, the one thing I am going to do, again, is I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of garam masala. So typically, Indians don't cook with garam masala the way I showed you. But remember, we're using it as a bit of a hack. The reason you put a 2nd teaspoon of garam masala in is for the fragrance. Some of those spices like cardamom, cinnamon, once they're cooked, the fragrance dissipates a little bit. So the way you should remember this is 1 for the pot and 1 for the nose. Okay, that's the best way to remember why we're using 2. Okay, now typically what I would do is I would take this chicken and I would chop it up, okay, into bite-sized pieces. Now we didn't have time to do that. Let me just... Yeah, you can get the spices. So there's an FAQs for butter chicken, Alex, if you can find it off my website. Just look up the word FAQs. It shows you the types of spices that are actually reasonable to use. I have links for all of these to Amazon. And then on top of that, you can get them from Penzies and from Spice House. My dog, by the way, has come to investigate. Okay, let's clean up this mess I made over here a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn this saute off. And that is actually the carrot halva that just got made. And so essentially what I do is I pour half the sauce on here and I save half of it. And this is where I would put in any cilantro or anything else I had. Now, you probably don't need to spoon it out the way I am. I actually have some mobility issues, and so I can't lift that huge big pot up, is why it's going on in this very fiddly fashion over here. Okay? But that is our butter chicken. It doesn't look like much, but let me tell you, it's amazing. So you really, I hope you really get to try this and enjoy it. There's no onion, so let me talk about that. So Roger, if you will move to me. Grace, honey, this is really not a safe place for a doggy. Okay. People ask me this all the time. They go, what kind of a curry are you making without onions? So in the FAQs, Alex, have you had a chance to post the FAQs? Looking for it? Just do a search for FAQs on the website and it should show up. In the FAQs, I've addressed the difference between chicken tikka masala and butter chicken. And butter chicken is noted for a smooth, creamy tomato cream butter flavor. We don't typically put in onions. Now, if you want to, you can. But if you want to put in onions, you might as well try the chicken tikka masala recipe. That might be more of the sort of the flavor that you're looking for to come out of there. Okay. Now, you know, again, multiple ways to make it. Who knows what's the right way, right? This is just my way of making it. And it's a very popular recipe, as some of you might know. So I figured I'd share it with you and let you guys try that and see what you think. Okay. Other questions, Alex, while I get stuff ready?
Which immersion blender do you use?
Which what? Immersion blender. So I use a Cuisinart. Alex, post the link. I use a Cuisinart or I use a KitchenAid. And I find both of those to be equally valuable. So whichever one you want. Now, here's the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the insides of the carrot halva pot because you're going to be horrified. Okay. Remember I told you we were trying to split the milk? Well, we probably split the milk. Now, the one thing I'm doing is I want you to NPR this for 10 minutes, but you know, I don't want you to hang out here for endlessly. So I'm going to vent this and we'll see what happens. Other questions while I'm waiting? That's it? Any comments? By the way, I want to show you my apron. Okay, so now what happened there was I started to get some spitting and spewing. And that happens when you're NPRing too fast. Okay, so if you've got a overfull pot or if you've got a soupy broth, etc., if you start to NPR it and it starts to spew, turn it off immediately. Don't wait until you have beef stew all over your kitchen before you do that. Yep. Yes, so you can use a regular blender. The thing to be very careful about is that when the hot liquid starts to centrifuge like that, it creates a vacuum. And what happens is you open the lid and it spews everywhere. So you really need to be careful. Now, one thing I haven't tried, but a lot of other people have told me they do if they don't have an immersion blender, is that they blend the tomatoes, onions, and garlic, etc. ahead of time, and they pour that in. I haven't done that because I think that, you know, I have to write recipes that 1,000 people can make without hearing about how it didn't work out and how it burned, right? So there's a slightly higher chance of it burning, so I haven't done it that way, but if you'd like to try that, certainly feel free. In fact, I think that's safer than putting a hot liquid in a blender, to be honest. So if it's a choice between putting a hot liquid in a blender or blending the sauce ahead of time, I would recommend that you blend it ahead of time. It's a little bit safer for you. Yeah, love. Anything? Okay, so let me try. So now it was spewing, so I turned it off. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, you can. So one of the things I've noticed is that there are two spices that I hear from people that they're extremely sensitive taste-wise. One of them is cilantro, and the other is cinnamon. There's a bunch of people that just feel like cilantro tastes like soap. If you're one of those, either omit the cilantro or use parsley. And I've noticed that some people are highly sensitive to the taste of cinnamon. If that happens, you should omit the cinnamon. If you can tolerate allspice, I would put in a few allspice berries instead, just to get it a little bit more of a complex flavor profile in there. But yeah, this is the thing, guys. That garam masala, you could put peppercorns in there. You could put star anise in there. You could leave out the whatever. As long as you're just messing with one or two ingredients, one preferably, you're fine. If you decide to change 6 of them, then please let me have the recipe because you've just invented a new kind of garam masala that I'd love to hear about. Yeah.
Why did you use the blender and the butter chicken? Why can't you leave the tomato cool down?
Yeah. So the thing is, yeah. You could leave the tomato as it is. I don't know if you noticed. I think I'm taping this, so I'll post it afterwards. If you look at the difference in the smoothness and the consistency and the thickness of the sauce with the tomato left whole versus pureed, it's completely different. Reason number 1. Reason number 2 is emulsification. So if I don't have time to go into emulsification now, but emulsification is essentially taking fat globules and mixing it into food in a way that provides a richness of flavor. So you know when you're making mayonnaise, you know how you have oil and vinegar and they come together in this creamy mix. that essentially what we've done with the butter chicken is we've emulsified that sauce with the butter and the cream in it. If you did it with just tomatoes, you would have chunks in there, and it wouldn't give you that smooth texture the way that you need. And by the way, I don't know how your kids are, but a lot of kids don't like chunks in their food anyway. And many children love the butter chicken. So if you're going to try it with a kid, like I said, try it the first time with the recipe the way it's written, and then from that point on, modify to your heart's content. The FAQs tells you a bunch of ways that other people have modified it, which might be helpful also. Yep. Anything, Alex?
What were you going to say about your apron?
About what, honey? Oh, my apron. Yes. So this apron was made for me by Shelly Chandler, who's part of my Twosleevers group. And I thought it was really nice. She actually made me this thing called Twosleevers. So I just wanted to brag about that because it's kind of fun. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn that guy off. It's been on natural pressure release. I don't want to run 2 IPs on here just in case something blows. That would not be nice. We'd be plunged into darkness. Okay, now... Give me a minute. I need another spoon. Okay, I should have planned this better. I need a better spoon than this, but I'm going to use this. When I open this, we are likely to be quite horrified, and I want to show it to you anyway because I want you to know you should not be horrified. Okay? So, oh, look at that. Roger, switch to the top view. I'm going to wait until you do that because it is okay. Guys, look at this mess. Look at this mess that you just cooked. Somebody's going to look at that and go, what the hell is that? And throw it out. Don't throw it out. Don't throw it out. You see this? This is all the milk solids that I wanted you to create. If you weren't here, I would eat a little bit. I'm going to eat a little bit of this. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So those milk solids are what you were trying to do. So this is my cheater way of getting koya. Okay, and now if I had my immersion blender clean, I would use that. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to blend the heck out of this, okay? And I'm not going to be able to do it quite right now, but you're going to smoosh this down a lot, okay? And I'll show you the finished recipe so you see how it looks. There's a little bit of brownness. There's all this, and I'm going to turn this on to saute. Okay, and I'm going to keep smooshing this as much as I can. And what's going to happen is you're going to saute this, you're going to smush this, and as you're sauteing, the milk solids will be left behind, and the water is all going to melt itself out. Now, you can do a much better job of this than I am. I don't have quite the hand strength that a lot of you will, so yours will probably go easier than mine is going. Okay, so anyway, so I will show you the finished product because it takes a few rounds of this and sauteing, and then you're going to add in a little bit of the ground cardamom towards the end because you want a good flavor in it, okay? So this mess that you've got, I know it looks like a mess. I'll tell you what it looks like when you're done. Yep, ask. This is what it looks like. Hang on just a minute, Alex, if you would. This is what it looks like when it's done. Now, this has been sitting for a while. It's been smooshed. I've just made a mess over here. But you see all of the liquid is out of there. All of the milk solids are left in here. And you've got your little pistachios that you put in. This is going to taste very, very different than the restaurant version. The restaurant versions do not have so many carrots. What they have a lot of is sugar. Or sweetener. So it's going to be more home style. And if you like, you can put in, I don't have any anymore, but you can put in a little bit of cream or whatever else you want on top of it and enjoy. Yeah, Alex, ask.
Could you use the immersion blender if you lack the strength to smush?
Yes, you can. Mine was dirty. So, yeah.
When you blend the immersion blender, the raisins and nuts will get blended too. Is that how it should be?
It shouldn't technically be that way. One of the things that I sometimes do is I don't put the raisins and nuts in until afterwards. So the traditional way to do it is that you cook the nuts and raisins in the ghee, you take them out, and then you cook the halva, and then you put those nuts back in. Now, I am lazy/efficient, so I didn't do that. But especially if you were planning to use an immersion blender, then that's really what you want to do, is you want to leave the nuts and the raisins out and do them afterwards. Let me turn this off so that we don't have a mess. Okay. Okay, Roger, are we still on the top view? Yeah, honey.
Couldn't you use a potato rice or pav bhaji masher with better results?
Yep, you could. So let me do this. Let me show you guys this and then move the camera to me, and then I will answer all the questions that we have. So we've been here a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but in that time we've got a gajar halwa. We've got our butter chicken, plus I have a ton of sauce left for next time, and I have rice. And if I hadn't been talking at you the whole time, we could have finished this whole thing in about half an hour. So Roger, if you want to switch the camera back to me, I'll answer some of the questions. Go ahead, Alex. So somebody asked, couldn't you do this faster with the pav bhaji blender thing or a potato ricer? You absolutely could. The other thing that I often do is I use shredded carrots so that I don't have to go through that whole mashing process. Even with the shredded carrots, you still have to do it a little bit. One thing I would not do is I would not cook it for longer, because you saw already the milk had separated quite a bit. Any more and you're going to have a burn. So a little bit of elbow grease is totally worth this deliciousness that you get out of it. Oh, and we made the garam masala too, which I forgot to put out here. But those are the 4 things that we basically made in half an hour. Go ahead, honey.
Is that dessert?
That is dessert. That is absolutely dessert. Now, if you want to know what will go well with this, if you're low carb, skip the rice. And there is a cucumber koshimbir recipe. Alex, if you can find it, look for cucumber on the blog. There's a cucumber salad recipe that just goes beautifully with this. You can also make cucumber zoodles, you know, just raw, and the tomato and the cucumber are just an excellent, excellent mix together. The other thing for a very quick salad, which is quite traditional with a meal like this, is that you would simply slice tomatoes, red onions, and cucumbers into thin slices. You lay them out all pretty on a plate. You take some salt in your hand. I'll show you this one day. You take some salt in your hand and you take a lemon, and you just kind of squeeze the lemon. It drips through the salt onto it, and that's your dressing. You go through that. So you serve butter chicken, rice, and that cucumber, tomato, onion salad. And then when people are done, you serve them the dessert, and they've had essentially a wonderful meal at your house, and one they'll always remember, hopefully. And in a good way. Hopefully they'll remember it in a good way. Go ahead, Alex. Any other questions?
Schooling or background experience in cooking?
My school, okay. So I'm not trained as a chef. I have a PhD in experimental psychology. I am an experimental psychologist and a statistician by trade. So I run a direct marketing agency that I own in my spare time. I started cooking when I was 14. My mother made me cook every night, which I was very resentful. But I've been cooking on and off, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what was happening with my health or with the children or with the whatever. But I got back into cooking about 8 years ago when my husband came and organized the whole kitchen for me so that I could actually find things. So Roger's really, really good at organizing. He, by the way, does all the camera, all the technical stuff. Alex helps with the questions. So I just started to cook. So you see the way I cook. I'm not a chef. I'm just, like a normal person. I have children to feed. I have a husband I like to keep well fed. I like to eat well. And that's my background. You want to see the puppy? It's going to be a bit tough to see the puppy. I'll post a picture of the puppy. How about that? She's adorable. She's a yellow lab. She's just a sweetheart. And what else?
Are those baby carrots, and does it alter the taste?
As opposed to what? Grated carrots? They're baby carrots. You know what? Baby carrots in this country, in the US, are really big carrots that have been pared down. So they have the same taste of big carrots. Now, I'll tell you, if you were in Punjab during the winter, if you were in New Delhi during the winter, you would get these really dark red carrots. And gajar halwa is typically made with deep, dark red carrots. So when they give it to you in the restaurant, they're putting color in it to approximate that, because most of us want those winter carrots. And they're a very deep, dark color. By the way, the Twosleevers group, about 10 of us are going on an India cooking and eating tour, basically. And then in November, 20 more of us are going to go. It's just a trip that I'm helping organize, because people they want to go experience India, but they don't want to do it by themselves. And so I figured we'd give it a shot. So if you're interested in that, join the group. Yep.
So what's in it?
In this, the gajar halwa. So because this is live, I don't want to go through everything again. We've kept people for a little bit longer. But basically, if I can remember, it's got ghee, it's got pistachios and raisins, it's got sweetener, carrots, whole milk, and cardamom. And that's it. I'll do a similar recap for the butter chicken. It's got tomatoes, ginger, garlic, cayenne, turmeric, salt, garam masala. And then we put butter and cream. And the rice, we made 1 cup rice, 1 cup water, 1 tablespoon ghee, 1 teaspoon salt. And we made these 2 together. And the garam masala has 5 or 6 different spices that I showed earlier. So I'm going to, I'll post this one live, and then you guys can go back and have a look at it from the beginning. Okay, guys, this has been a little bit longer than I typically do. It's been an hour, and I know people have other things to do. I really appreciate you guys joining us, all three of us, actually four, counting the puppy. And again, I'm Urvashi Patre. My blog is twosleevers.com. We have a very nice group on Facebook called Twosleevers International Instant Pot Recipes. It's full of very, very smart chefs who are excellent cooks. And I actually have a cookbook out called the Instant Pot Cookbook, which has been authorized by Instant Pot, and it's a bestseller on Amazon if you'd like to check it out. So thanks again for joining me. I hope it was helpful. And I'm Urvashi, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.